Welcome back for our next session. Where is email marketing headed in 2026? I'm Guy Hanson. I'm VP of Customer Engagement here at Validity. It's a real pleasure to be joined by my Validity colleague, Danielle Gallant. She's Senior Email Strategist in our Professional Services team. And a huge welcome to a true industry titan, our old friend Al Iverson, who currently works in the role of Industry Research and Community Engagement Lead at Valimail, and also, of course, known around the world for his awesome spamresource.com website. Al, so good to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Guy.
So let's jump straight in. In our world of email, the pace of change is dizzying. And keeping up is hard enough, never mind figuring out what's coming next. So over the next 30 minutes, we're going to discuss all the big themes that are shaping our fast-changing landscape, the tactics that you as email marketers need to respond, and at the end of the day, how to keep your marketing human as the machines try to take over. Let's get started. So we're going to be releasing our brand new deliverability benchmark report soon, a little bit later this month. And so my first question for you two is, how do we think that deliverability is going to trend in 2026? Is it getting easier? Is it getting harder? Is the balance shifting towards Gmail maybe in terms of most difficult mailbox provider to get delivered at? Al, share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, Guy. So at the end of Q4, right at the end of the year, I put a little survey asking people, hey, which is the mailbox provider that people had the most trouble with? And people in this absolutely 100% scientific survey, people seem to say that Microsoft was their biggest challenge. But the data didn't totally agree with that in what we saw over at Valimail in DMARC land. So all thanks to Google added rejection reporting, stuff that would have only been in SMTP logs previously. Google started adding that to aggregate DMARC reporting. So now people that ingest DMARC reporting to that is usually used to just focus on email authentication failures can now see specific reasons in some cases why mail is actually being rejected. And looking at that, we found a whole bunch of instances covering millions upon millions of messages where like people had blatantly screwed up like a DNS configuration or some other thing that was causing huge problems at Gmail. So I kind of take that Microsoft recommendation as the big problem with a grain of salt. I think Microsoft clearly was a problem for folks, but I think a lot of people were having trouble at Gmail and some of those didn't even realize it. And it's just crazy to see like one huge marketing sender, 30%, a good third of their mail was bouncing. We're talking that's 30, 40 million messages at a time. So it is not getting easier. It didn't get easier last year. It's not going to get easier this year either.
I agree. And actually, the report I was talking about, I'll share a couple of sneak peek snippets. So I think, you can see the data I'm showing here. Overall, year-on-year inbox placement rates up, but they did start slipping back in the second two quarters of last year. In Europe, highest performing region with inbox placement rates well over 90% in UK, France, and Germany. And you're spot on, Al. I think Microsoft does remain the toughest mailbox provider in terms of data, but it was improving rapidly. Now, Danielle, bringing you into the conversation, because I think you've got some thoughts to share in terms of relevancy sorting.
I do. And I mean, I think that it's fair to have a debate. I'm watching the chat. It's Outlook, Gmail, everybody providing their feedback.
Yeah.
And so we can debate about from like a blocking or even being able to get past the gateway perspective about which is most difficult, right? But I think when it comes to individual user actions and filtering, Gmail is kind of upping the game in terms of how difficult it will be to continue to get those messages seen. So, relevancy sorting for promotional emails was rolled out pretty recently, meaning that messages that subscribers engage with most, or maybe fail to engage with most, will get prioritized or deprioritized in an order of engagement. So, properly authenticated, high volume senders can very likely see engagement degradation through lower prioritization of email placement, right? And if we see that, we're going to see overall engagement decays, which can, in turn, lead to reputation problems for sure.
So in fact, I'm probably going to preface this. I think many of our customers ask us if we think the mailbox provider requirements are going to evolve further. Everyone's familiar with the need for DMARC and one-click opt-outs and keep your complaints down. And, you kind of wonder what's going to happen next. I think we've seen before that, today's best practices become tomorrow's mandatory requirements. I think speaking personally, I know mailbox providers would love to see more email programs tightening up on their sign-up processes. And I think, we're not just talking about implementing double opt-in here. I'm thinking about perhaps something a little bit more layered, real-time validation of email addresses, perhaps rate limiting how fast an address can be captured, more use of capture technology, additional security questions. I feel like all of those need to be sort of brought into the picture, to clamp down on, unfettered bot signups. What do you think, Al? What do you think? How do you think those requirements might evolve?
So I think you were spot on with the things that a marketer needs to do better to keep a clean list, keep a clean house. I would add on top of that, thinking of the technical requirements. Of course, I have a bias because I work for a DMARC provider, right? So mailbox providers, especially the top four, Maggie, Microsoft, Apple, Gmail, and Yahoo, they've all mandated these requirements around email authentication, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. DMARC being a part of that, but so far, with just only mandating a P equals none policy. Any policy is okay. You don't have to restrict what happens to unauthenticated mail. And so, while that has been good enough, going all the way back to October 2023 to today, we're going to see a point at some point in this near future. I don't know if that's this year or next year, this month or next month, but I do rather suspect it's coming, where it's time to actually up your DMARC game, meaning to not just put in any old DMARC record, but actually position your domain to tell the world that you authenticate all your mail. And if it says it's from me and it's not from me, reject it. I think we're headed in that direction. It seems inevitable just from sort of the incremented, the graduated increasing of these requirements over time. First was to get you to know about DMARC. Now, and so the second step in DMARC is to actually use it to protect mail. Good marketers are never the target of mailbox provider spam filters. Good marketers get caught up in a mailbox provider's best efforts to stop really bad, really malicious stuff. And implementing DMARC with an actual level of protection is what keeps you separate, keeps you more identifiable as a good sender and away from you getting caught up in what they're doing to try to block bad stuff.
And I
You
think on
agree,
that,
Danielle?
yeah, I do. I can't help myself. I was ready to jump in on that. I on that piece about being identifiable, right? Like the mailbox providers are going to see your DMARC record and they are going to see what that security looks like in that reject. But there's a really huge trade-off there for having those enforcement policies at the DMARC record for senders, which is BIMI or a VMC or a CMC, which allows your brand's logo to be present in subscriber inboxes, which is a huge factor. So it's really like a potential for this reemergence of trust through this, logo implementation. So a trade-off, right? Like security both for the mailbox provider and an indicator of trust for your actual subscribers, I think.
What the people at Mog love to say
100%.
is it's a carrot and a stick, and it's a kind of a mix of reasons, different reasons, both positive and negative, to force you toward better compliance.
Absolutely. Al, I know that you guys at Valimail have got a great DMARC report coming out, so just giving a little bit of airtime while Danielle was talking there.
Thank you, thank you. And yeah, Validity talks about deliverability benchmarks, but here at Valimail, we talk about DMARC, the state of DMARC, and DMARC benchmarks. So look for this report coming very soon. We're going to release this actually late next week, and it'll cover 12 different industries and break down DMARC results, DMARC data across these different industries and challenges associated with that.
Nice. So let's shift the conversation to artificial intelligence. I know our listeners are going to hear a load about this topic today, but I think probably the biggest news of 2026 so far has been Google's announcement of Gemini's integration into Gmail. Is this going to be a genuine game changer in terms of how consumers engage with their emails, Al?
So people are so freaked out by the AI, the artificial intelligence inbox, and yeah, it is a significant game changer. And I started thinking back to 20, what was I doing 20 years ago? I was helping people, helping, different companies, software publishers primarily, like Semantic, offer 30-day trial versions where we would send conversion emails and say, hey, your 30-day trial is up, please buy. Very simple, very straightforward. You get one button, click to buy, single call to action. And that's what we were doing 20 years ago. And if you're still doing that today, if your email is so simple that it can be condensed down to a single sentence summary, then yes, you're going to struggle in that AI inbox. And so, what is the thing to do instead? And that's to figure out how to make your emails actually better connect with subscribers. And to me, the world that I look to for that inspiration is newsletters. Newsletters are sort of a shining gem, a beacon in email right now. They're one of the best things about email. They're very popular. Everybody loves them. People sign up because they want to read them. They want to see what's in them. Even if AI summarizes them, people are still going to click through, still going to want to read all that. How can you make the content that you offer up more like newsletters? There might be some limitations. Maybe you can only do so much, but you have to start thinking about that and just doing it the same way that we've all been doing it with a single page click to buy email that we've been doing for 20 plus years. That happens because if your email can be summarized down to nothing, you're not really sending something that valuable.
Danielle, are we going to see some unintended consequences?
I think so. I TBD on Gemini specifically, obviously, but I think that there are a huge range of unintended consequences that are going to come from AI. I mean, in our state of email webinar that we had in January, we talked about a potential like demise for send time optimization, right? STO, which I know many of my clients use, but really the bulk of those tools are leveraging data points, and we're going to talk more about data for sure in a minute, that are like opens, which great from a directional perspective, but we can't really say that someone has opened an email at a given time in bulk anymore. And especially with stuff like relevancy sorting, does that send time actually matter much anyway? So for senders that are using STO especially, start paying pretty close attention to its efficacy. Start doing some testing there.
I agree. But even before Google's announcement, there's already been a ton of commentary around the impact of AI generated summaries. We've heard a little bit about that in the previous sessions. Al, do you think we're going to see the arrival of tools soon to help senders reverse engineer what their customers are going to see in the inbox in terms of summaries?
I really hope so. I think it is absolutely necessary because you have all these different ways that different AI tools are going to summarize your messages, whether it be on device with Apple Intelligence or it's Gmail and Gemini. We need a way to be able to test that. And so, if you don't have the tools or if the tools are lacking, they're coming. They're going to come at some point. But in the meantime, test, and actually look at this stuff and see what's in there, and don't just sort of assume.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Now, we've been looking at this through a fairly sender-centric lens, but I find myself wondering what our senders' customers think about all this. Are they buying into AI-driven email marketing, Danielle, do you think? Or are we going to start seeing a little bit of consumer pushback this year?
I mean, can I just say first, before I talk about what consumers actually think, it's funny because when I talking about the relevancy sorting in the Gmail promotions inbox, when you actually look for that and you find it on Reddit, you see, how do I turn this off? Like, how do I get rid of this? How do I go back? So even within what the mailbox providers are doing, change is maybe never easy. But certainly from the consumer perspective, again, in our SOE webinar in January, we cited that 2 in 5 say that they are less likely to engage with AI generated content. And Gmail's AI is disabled by default in certain regions, Europe, I believe. There
Yeah.
are certainly concerns that are being voiced about accuracy, tone, privacy. It's the gamut. So senders need to up their game around transparency for sure, consent, ability to opt out. from AI content in general. What a novel concept, I guess. Guy, what do you think?
You know, just a couple of days ago, there was a really great reply to one of my LinkedIn posts this week, and it basically read, AI has made scale cheap. Judgment is still expensive.
Hmm.
And the teams that figure out how to pair automation with real listening are going to be the ones in the lead. And the lady that wrote this comment, she basically summarized the whole conversation in just 2 sentences. I loved it. At the end of the day, we need to remember to design with AI, not just for AI. There's so much talk about optimizing for AI, much less talk about how AI serves the ultimate goal for marketers, which, by the way, remains reaching and connecting with human beings. That's my 30 seconds on the soapbox.
I love it.
And I would add to that too, if I could, thinking about Google is taking a big swing. They are assuming that everybody wants the robot to summarize their emails.
Mm.
And there's precedent there. To Danielle's point, not only does not everybody want this, but look back to the promotions tab. When tab organization first came in Gmail, a lot of people were the first thing they asked to look at the Reddit threads on those was how do I turn this horrible thing off? Not everybody wants this. Remember the survey data that said people turn this stuff off. So while it's important to design for it and keep it in mind, don't assume that every recipient is going to be reading it through that filter.
Well
It's certain
spoken.
totally important to design for it. And I want to kind of stay in the design area for a minute. I want to touch on the creative side of email marketing in the coming months and coming year. Guy, maybe I'll put this to you first. What do you think we can expect to see in terms of creative and content changes as the year plays out?
You know, I think we're going to see a rise in the use of micro animations. And if you're not familiar with the term, it's a really subtle tactic, just enough movement to catch subscribers' attention without bloating the email's weight. So if you look at my Bulgari example here, I love it. Just look carefully at what's happening with their logo at the top of the email. And I think micro animations can be used to amplify logos like you're seeing here, draw attention to your CTAs, highlight specific product features in the email. And I think side benefits are going to be things like faster load times and greater mobile friendliness. And I figure we're definitely seeing a trend this year back to design simplicity, and micro animations are part of this ongoing of this ongoing evolution. What do you think, Danielle?
Yeah, I do agree. And speaking of like micro here, I'm gonna issue my own. Maybe every time I make a prediction, it's kind of like a hope. So maybe I'm just outing myself. But I'm going with what I'm going to call snack size messaging. Spoiler for our live email optimization session a little bit later today. But emails have been so long for so long. And I did see a really good comment in the chat, which was if your subscribers are trained to read your really, really long emails, then that may be very true. But I've been working with so many senders lately that have been taking a real look at how, for example, Apple Mail is showing their content in digest view. So that really, really small square that you get at the top of the email, which is all the subscriber can actually see until they select see more. Smaller emails can make for better digestion with screen readers if they have the appropriate alt text and descriptions, of course. And so I think that like short, punchy headlines that stand out, buttons and appropriate targeting there, collapsible or like card style layouts, something that allows for easy skimmability. I know we've been talking about the limited attention spans that we have to work with, but since so many opens, or at least those initial views happen on phones, I think we can expect more like bite-sized text and visual hierarchy that works really well vertically and actually fits within the visual frames, that limited real estate that we see. What do you think, Al?
I'm hearing so many food metaphors there: bite size, snack size, digestion. I think you're
I'm
ready for
hungry.
lunch,
It's
aren't you?
almost lunch.
So for me, I think
Um,
it's all about we have to figure out how to make sure we don't vibe code in a way that It's with vibe coding, and I don't know about you, but I'm guilty of this myself, right? Vibe coding lets anybody suddenly become an HTML email designer, and it can make really good looking emails that are actually coded quite badly because you have to think of all these things that are not on the surface visible. You make this design that looks great. Will it render properly on mobile? Will it work with screen readers? Will it work in dark mode? Does it know about the quirks, the edge cases that we've all had to deal with, like the tricks to render in Microsoft Outlook to, double or triple up your tables and have the little MSO codes. It doesn't always know that depth of that. So to me, testing is still key. Testing is almost more important now because it allows people to sort of get in over their britches. Like I am not really an email designer by any measure, but I redesigned my own newsletter template and made something that looks really great in Apple Mail and looks like absolute garbage in Outlook. So those are the things that you can sort of get tripped up on that I think is kind of this new frontier that people that wouldn't have bothered to code it themselves by hand before will now use AI tools and run into these problems.
I think you're spot on, and I'm watching the chat. It's absolutely on fire, and clearly a load of folk listening to us today who are 100% in agreement with you there, Al. That's for sure. So, let's shift topic. I think increasingly, and again, we've heard a little bit about this already, the value of traditional email metrics like opens and clicks have been devalued by developments such as Apple's MPP, link testing by spam filters. So I guess the key question is, what new metrics are email marketers going to need to turn to in 2026 so that they can continue accurately measuring the effectiveness of their email programs? What do you think, Danielle?
I'm actually going to steal Beth O'Malley of Astral's idea that she had when she came on to record an episode of Email After Hours, our podcast with us. Stay tuned, that's coming out soon. An idea, she had this idea that is a metric, time to first meaningful action after send. I don't know if I'm going to out myself here, but I'm 5 feet tall. I'm subscribed to a lot of stuff, but I'm not really going to be shopping online. It's never going to fit me. So I might see something that I like in an email that I get. And then what is the meaningful action tied to that, right? I might go to a store and actually make a purchase that's associated with my account and my email address. So an email has many valuable secondary roles, not just generating clicks. And Beth calls it the billboard effect. This is a subscriber might be email disengaged, but brand engaged. So just the awareness of the offer in their inbox can act as a trigger for someone to visit a physical retail location, make a purchase, enroll in a loyalty program, engage on social media, visit the website. There's so many other meaningful actions that we can be looking at here that kind of helps us understand the efficacy of an email program. Like obviously traditional email metrics are still important, but I really do hope that marketers lean into these like meaningful actions more and more.
I love it, Danielle. Although I've got to say, our audience has got distracted because suddenly there's like a whole 5-footer club that's popped up in the chat. So
Yes.
you've got your
Welcome,
supporters there.
everybody.
um, Al, in our opening session today with Mark Briggs and Gary V, the chat went on a complete wormhole, sort of discussing the pros and cons of open rate as a metric. What's your thoughts?
So open rates are still there. They're there. They have a ton of limitations, but open rates and click rates are, in particular, are still there. Open rates are this weird thing where it's there is. Well, I'm not going to name and shame somebody. There's a well-known person who works for a mailbox provider who says opens are just bots talking to bots. There's no value to them, and he's not wrong, but there's an asterisk there, and that for directional tracking, open tracking is still valuable. It includes things that are not actually opens. So if you think about it, you think of it, it still includes your opens. It's less accurate than before, but there's still something to it. And so it's still a directional measure. It's effectively, in some cases, a bit of a almost an inbox metric versus an open metric. But to Danielle's point before, you got to find other things that are more accurate to build on top of this and putting it through the deliverability lens when you're trying to clean things up. You often say, pull your list back to based on recency, based on how recent somebody has interacted with your messages. So because of the problems inherent in opens today, try to think of those other metrics that you might not otherwise do to consider, might not otherwise use to consider in recency, like a sign up, like a purchase, like some offline or in the real world interaction. All of that is still proof that there's a real human at the other end of the line there. And if you use those as metrics, they can sort of help you back into signs of life for recency to be able to sort of segment your list based on activity, but also to sort of boost engagement overall based on the fact that you're targeting real people who have recently interacted with your brand, whether it be through an email open or not.
Such great thoughts there, Al. I'll chime in with mine. I think, my pet topic in terms of a new metric to monitor. I wrote a post last week about the death of no reply, and it generated a ton of comments. I've always thought that email marketing should be a two-way channel. There's plenty of mailbox provider guidance reinforcing why this should happen. And I think I'm predicting that reply rate will become a primary KPI. So literally replies divided by delivered emails. And I think the way to think about it is even if it's a fairly small number, like 1%, you got to remember that these are people who are going to have felt strongly enough about your message to respond. It's real engagement. They're raising their hand. They're saying, I'm happy to be seen, and I'm hoping and assuming that you might listen. And I think it means that senders need to start designing their emails specifically to encourage replies. And I love this example from Draper James. It uses a reply at address. And if you scroll down, you'll see this fabulous piece of text. Send questions, comments, love notes to us, and we'll write you back, we promise. That's what we're aiming for, right? So, Danielle and Al, time has flown, as it always does when you have fun. We've got about 3 minutes to finish up. Danielle, do you want to preface the last part of our conversation?
Yeah, we've kept this conversation mostly like real, but it'd be really good to hear some quick out there predictions to finish up. Al, why don't you kick us off with the Wegman story?
Wegmans. So for a couple of years, I unexpectedly lived in Ithaca, New York, and I was so happy to find that Ithaca is kind of a smallish, somewhere between a small town and big city. Definitely not a big city, but they had this world-class grocery store called Wegmans, and people that live up and down the East Coast or up in the Northeast rather know about it. And it's a fantastic store. It's everybody loves it. But they were in the news for a less happy reason about a month ago when they were it came to be that they were tracking customers who came in the door with facial recognition and other mechanisms to sort of identify people. And it immediately made me think of the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, where Tom Cruise's character is walking by a billboard, it retinal scans him, and it pops up an ad. It calls him out by name, John Anderton. Wouldn't you like to have a Guinness? And so there's sort of this balance between where are we going with AI at scale and personalization at scale, and when does it become too intrusive? When is it tracking us too closely? And that's the thing I got to be aware of. It's interesting to balance that too, because while Wegmans uses this biometric tracking model, Amazon Go is actually closing their grocery stores they were trying to test a similar model where you could just sort of tap and go or track and go. So there's kind of an open question of, well, how much is too much there, and what will people actually be okay with?
Love it. Love it. My wild prediction's actually in a similar vein. I think, we can clearly see that AI's center of gravity is already moving from our screen to our bodies. And I think the phrase life logging is going to be an early contender for 2026 World of the Year. And I think we're already seeing a brand new range of wearable AI devices that record the audio of your entire day. They're producing summaries, notes, transcripts at the end of it. You've got this example from Omi, which essentially acts as a second brain, that's their words, by capturing and processing your entire daily audio. And can you imagine the marketing opportunities? Because suddenly you're generating metadata for every conversation you have, every place you visit, every experience you're taking part in. And because of that, I reckon it could start to get distinctly Black Mirror-ish, don't you think? And if you're sitting there thinking, hey, guy, that's a little far-fetched, you guys just remember that the great mid 20th century sci-fi writers like Asimov and Clarke, they actually turned out to be prophets. Today's fiction is
Yeah.
tomorrow's reality, and I don't think we're that far away from it at all. Danielle, take us home. What's your wild prediction for this year?
I think I'm gonna end well, given everybody's response in the chat to just like the collective groan about the level of AI. But my prediction is that we've already seen lawsuits for misleading subject lines, and I really think that this is going to develop it into an entirely new industry of legal claims based on poor use of AI. Air Canada, I'm in Toronto. Air Canada a couple years ago basically had to deal with the legal ramifications of a chat bot providing bad information. And how is that so far from a mailbox provider AI tool re-summarizing inaccurate information or completely rewriting your subject line? So we'll see. But that's my
Yeah.
out there one.
Or telling you that
Watch
you get
this
80% off
space.
when the coupon actually says 20%.
There you go.
This has been such fun. I'm afraid we've used our full 30 minutes having this conversation, but I think our audience has liked it, man. I mean, at times this chat's been scrolling past so fast, I've been struggling to keep up with it. Danielle, Al, thank you so much for joining us for this session. I've really enjoyed it.